Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY and you can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob and I'm a Fudo fan on Instagram and on Twitter and have a blog at fudofan.com.
And this is episode 56. Thank you everybody so much for your support. Really happy to be here again with Jacob. I think this is actually the first time in a while since we've recorded together.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the last two, yes. So the last one was with Kwe, and then before that it was just you and Kwe and Alessa, but not me, right?
Yeah, that's right. And these one-on-one recordings are always great because it's much easier to edit.
That's true.
But we do have some follow-up from last week because we actually met. I think just after we recorded, you'd received some Sanzen Tomoe River paper, so TRS.
Yes.
And you did say how there's like a little bit of drag to it, and I tried this paper out during tips as well, actually. So I did kind of know what it felt like, but I had, I guess, less experience than you. And on one of the days that we met up, he said, "Hey, you got it from Yamamoto Paper." He said, "Here you go. Here's a pad." And yeah, so I've tried it out. I brought it to work. I was working in the office all week last week, but I brought it to work. I tried it with several different papers, and I hate it.
Okay, why do you hate it?
So the drag feeling does feel a little bit like Cosmo Air Light, which is already a no-no. But the interesting thing is that it actually feels different based on the nibs that I have. I don't really mind it on my Architect nibs and on my stack nibs. I think that's actually okay. But with some of the nibs that maybe naturally put down less ink, like my really sharp italic nibs, doesn't play well. And with one of my coarse nibs, which I'll talk about later on as well, ink just wouldn't come out of the pen. It felt really like plasticky. Yeah, I was actually not my cup of tea. So I'm very interested to know how other people will feel about it once this paper gets more proliferated, right?
Yeah, on that note, I'm a bit surprised that we haven't seen more reviews yet, since the paper has now been available to buy from Etsy for 2 weeks now. I thought that you would have reviewers that would want it to be early and would have bought it from Yamamoto or anyone else selling it the day it came out. But I haven't seen any other, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen any other reviews, so I find that a bit curious.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, but I'm not super, I guess, the reviewers who will review it will review. I think Brad has done a little review, at least on stream, but yeah, definitely given the relevance of Tomoe River paper in a lot of the community, not just our community, right? Not just the fountain pen community, but also in the Techo community, yeah, there has been a lack of information or of comparison. Yeah.
So I think what you said about drag is a bit interesting. So when I did my initial review back in November or whatever it was, I used the term texture, but I don't think I don't think that was the right term, because what I was really trying to describe was some kind of feedback. And then Alessa did a video review shortly after, and I think she used the term like drag or tooth, and I think that is more accurate. If you look at it with a loop, it doesn't look more textured. But according to Shumi no Bungobaku's most recent issue, this paper is slightly thicker than Tomoegawa's version, and I wonder if that makes it a little bit softer, and I wonder if that contributes to this drag, because you were talking now about Cosmo Air Light as well, and one feature of Cosmo Air Light as well as B7 Tranext, both from Nippon Paper, is that it's said to be bulky. So if you look at the product description for Cosmo Air Light, it uses this term like kasadaka. So it's a feature of the paper that it is thicker than other papers with the same GSM number. So it is less. It has a lower density. It's thicker, and I wonder if that is what gives it this drag. And I wonder if that is exactly what you dislike so much.
Well, it's curious because I remember maybe last year I bought a A4 pad of 58 GSM or 52 GSM, and I remember that it was very like weird and draggy as well. And I think I even commented to you. I said, "Hey, this Tomoe River feels really weird." And what I've noticed is that ever since I discovered 68 GSM in the larger notebooks, I think I've just been using that, and it does have a significant difference other than, you know, just the paper weight. So I'm wondering that, you know, as you said, they're going to at least make the 64. I'm wondering if those heavier weights will work better for me. And if they do, I would be very happy and curious to try it out. I think that actually would be great for the market, because that means, you know, you've got many more choices. So hopefully they do that.
Yeah, I got another confirmation today. We'll get to that in a bit. That 68, both 64 and also 68 GSM is in the works, and it will definitely be available this year. I think that is more of a niche paper than 52 GSM. I think the market for 52 GSM is bigger because of all of these planners, so and other applications as well. So I'm not surprised that they did 52 GSM first, but yeah, I think a lot of people in our little community of fountain pen enthusiasts are going to be eagerly awaiting the 68 GSM.
Yeah, absolutely. So enough about Tomoe River. I mentioned that I tried this Tomoe Sanzen with one of my course nibs, and this is a nib from Tohma, actually. So we talked a little bit about Tohma around tips, and they had shown their exclusive Shosaikan pen, and that was extremely cool. So I actually ordered a Tohma. Now, my aversion to Tohma initially was that they usually make inkidome, so Japanese eyedropper style pens. But now or actually 6 months ago, I saw that they had created this, which they call to be a snorkel filling pen. Have you ever heard of this before?
I associate that with like vintage Schaefer pens.
Yeah, so Schaefer used to have this snorkel filler where I've never owned one, so I don't really know how exactly it works, but like you could basically inside the feed there was another like tube, and you could like extend that tube, and then you can suck ink without touching the nib. So Tohma's snorkel filler is a different take on that. You can't push out this manual tube thing, but as I said, Tohma's pens have been traditionally inkidome, so you would remove the section and then fill it, right? So the size of the nib didn't matter, but in order to make an internal filling nib, right, what you need to do is have enough ink bottle size in order.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, in order to fill
Yeah.
the pen. And I hadn't thought about this before. I just like, oh yeah, Tohma Tohma, I'm not really into that. But he obviously thought a step further than me, and he's like, well, if you need to fill the pen, probably can't put the entire nib into the bottle because there aren't that many bottles that can fit this nib. So what he's done is he's created this kind of, again, snorkel filling thing. There's a feed and there's a hole underneath it. I'm just gonna share this to your Instagram so you can see what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Now this little hole, and by the way, this is made of ebonite. This tube doesn't extend like it does on the Schaefer ones, but what it allows you to do is you can dip it into the ink bottle and you just have to cover that hole and it will suck ink up through a pump filler. And there's actually two ways of filling it. You can either just use the pump or you can engage a internal valve. So there's a valve inside the pen. You can twist it and you can engage the valve. And once you engage the valve, then you can suck up using this little hole. Now a lot of pens with valves, so I'm thinking for example the custom 823 or the Conids, in order to release the valve, and even Inkidomi, right? In order to release the valve, you unscrew the back, right? But this pen, in order to seal the valve, you unscrew the back. So the default is actually an unsealed valve, which I think is actually pretty smart because you don't necessarily always need the valve. I think the valve is like a, I don't know, how should I say it? It's a special use case, right? Like if you're going on like air pressure unstable environments like airplanes, or you're doing something else, going up high mountains, maybe it's really hot outside or whatever. Like those are unusual situations, I would say, whereas most of the time you don't really need it. So I think this way of doing it is actually very, very smart.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I think I said last time we discussed Tohma that they are a little bit like the Lamborghini or Pagani of fountain pens, where like Namiki would be the Ferrari. Like it's more ostentatious. It's more. It's crazier. It's less pragmatic. I mean, this is like having like a giant rear spoiler or like wing doors, right? You're not buying this for your journal, or you're not buying this for as an everyday carry. You want the most showy and like hilarious, elaborate pen, and yeah, I think he's doing the right thing by just coming up with increasingly crazy ways of filling the pen.
Yeah, and I have to say that when I got the pen, we do hear a lot of reports that the ink flow is not super stable on Tohmas, and that's something that I have to agree with. I ended up cutting more slits, more channels in the feed, and now it's like extremely wet. So there is definitely a sweet spot that I'm still trying to find in playing with this pen. I did notice several things with the pen, so I'm actually going to take it back to him for slight repairs, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see. But nonetheless, I think it was very expensive. If you ask me, was it worth it? I would still say yes. Somebody handmade that. It took like 6 months. Polished it to, a mirror polish. Immaculate polish. And yeah, it's a work of engineering. So I would say it's worth it. But it's definitely a pen that I think is good to. I'm glad that I'm in Japan so that I can talk to him, and bring it back to him.
Right.
It might not be the pen that gets it right the first time.
So, I mean, you're saying that it's expensive, and in absolute terms, of course, I mean, this is a big number, but if you compare it to the competition, which would be like an Namiki Emperor, it's in the same range, right? And I'm sure a lot of the cost has to do with, I mean, if you're going to make a ginormous gold nib, you're going to have some some raw material costs associated with that. So I'm not sure that's a big part of it. So it's not like, for what it is, I don't think the price is that outrageous.
Yeah, it's definitely not that outrageous, and I'll say that this is actually less expensive than the Shosakan Myth, for example.
Yeah.
So definitely not an outrageous pen, but yeah, it's expensive. I can't shy away from that, right? It is expensive.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Tohma, and I think you and I both, we went to different events today because this is like the second week of Golden Week, which marks the 1 week holiday for us. This is kind of like my Christmas, right? But you and I both went to different places. I think you're still in the Tokyo area, while I came out to the Kurashiki
Right.
area, which I think Koi mentioned 2 episodes ago.
Mm.
So why don't you tell us about Tono Lims first, and then I'll talk about this.
Yeah, sure. So today was the first day of Tono Lims spring event. Now it's not actually called the spring event. It's called like something like Space Walk, Space Tour, Space Party. It's like a weird name like that.
Yeah.
And as usual, it was hard to find any information about it because, as far as I can tell, Tono Lims doesn't have like a website. They got their Instagram and they got Twitter, right. And that's pretty much it. So you have to like piece together information across posts like scattered all over the place, mixed with information about new inks and whatnot. So it was hard to find out, as usual, what was going on. But as far as I understood, it was going to be like a ink event in Hamamatsucho, so this venue where Tips is and the Wagner events are now. So I went there in the morning, and I arrived around 11. So what I gathered from the posts was that you could line up like 1 hour before for the Seriken, but just like last time, it was all random, so there was no real point in doing that. I thought. So
right. So it's a rubbish system.
Yeah. So I arrived. So this was on the 3rd floor of this like giant building, and it was tons of people. And as far as I could tell, everyone already had their ticket. And I couldn't really understand how to get a ticket at first, but it turns out that you had to go outside. There was this like balcony there, and there was this one guy standing there in a funny hat with a paper bag, and apparently that was the guy you had to talk to. He had there was no Tono Lims logo or anything like that. You had just to find this funny guy with a funny hat and say, I want to go to the event. Can you give me a ticket? So I got one, and my number was 371. So worse number than last time for sure. And just like last time, there was this QR code. You could scan that, and you can go to a website and it give you like an estimate for when might be your turn. So in my case, it said you're gonna have to wait 170 minutes. So I thought, okay, I'm not even sure I have that much time. So I'm just gonna go down to Tallis and get a coffee and a sandwich and see if the numbers start moving faster than that. So I did, and as I was paying for my coffee, I checked again, and suddenly the number went up to 300. So clearly the estimates weren't super accurate. So I ended up having my sandwich and a coffee in a hurry, and then I went up again, and by the time I went back up, the number was already 400, and there was no one even asking for your ticket anymore. Everyone's already inside. So I just went in, and without showing my ticket to anyone, because no one even asked for it. So much for that numbering system. But it was the venue was huge. I would think the room, like this conference exhibition hall, whatever you call it, was just as big as the one they have for Tips. But I would say there were more tables and far more crowded. And the very first thing you saw was the royal family, and the royal family being, King Hase, Crown Prince Betchori, and Princess Moe. Right. That there were like the center of gravity, and there were tons of people waiting for a chance to talk to them and buy stuff from them. And of course, you needed a separate sidekick just to get to that table. So I didn't even bother. So I walked around a bit to other tables. Yeah, you had all the usual suspects there. You had, you got Kobayashi, Ishimaru, like Shokido, Okamoto, yeah, and a bunch of stores I'd never heard of. And Morrison was there, Lichtop was there, and so on. I went to Yamamoto Paper and I talked to Mr. Yamamoto and asked him about Tomoe River, and he confirmed that the 68 GSM is coming out soon. He didn't know exactly when, but definitely this year, so that was good to hear. And I bought some paper from him. So he has this, I think it's called a memo box, some small square paper cutouts, perfect for ink swatches. I bought that. Sanzen Tomoe River and Tomogawa Tomoe River and Cosmo Light. And then some friends had asked me to buy some Kobayashi pens. So I went to Kobayashi's table, which was super popular as well. And it wasn't even clear where to line up. There were people everywhere. There was no obvious start of the line. Interestingly, it didn't seem as if many people bought Kobayashi's pens, and I think that's a common theme. I think we talked about that last time. So Kobayashi had, the strawberry Sailor Minis. They had the Maki Decimos and some new anniversary Briarwood Pro-Gear pen. I didn't see anyone else buying that. But Kobayashi is doing a very good job with the inks, I think. So Kobayashi has this line of Tono Lims, shimmering, and the swordings. Everyone seems to love those. And they also have a line of a chroma shading, light shading, sailor inks, and they have had a few new releases. And people bought dozens of bottles, and everyone and those disappeared fairly quickly. But yeah, the common theme was that you had all of these coveted pens, or pens that people think of as coveted in the West, like Hachimondia had, the Kubosakura, Ginzan, Jellyfish, got the pink and white Decimo. No one seemed to buy those. They just skipped those and went for the inks. So the glass pens went very fast. The inks went very fast, and I was there only for 1 hour or so. But I think overall it was probably more people, based on what I could see, more people at this event than at Tokyo Pen Show. And interestingly, it was all free. So for all of the chaos, kudos for a huge show like that was actually free for the attendees. So that was pretty cool, actually. I think this might now be not only bigger than Tokyo Pen Show, but also bigger than this Inkinuma show. It is basically a replacement for the Inkinuma show. So one more thing, I ended up talking to Mori-san. So Mori-san has only recently started to discover that everyone likes his Wagner pens. It took him a while to catch up and realize that his pens are very popular, but now he has that. So now he has found all kinds of old pens, the 2016, 17, all the old sought after models, but now they're more priced at what you would expect to see on eBay and so on. So he's trying to capitalize on that now. And he also sold a bunch of YY Pen Club pens, that matte clear demo one and so on. They were all priced 60,000 yen and so on. So I think that's all more expensive than it was at first. But yeah, he's catching up now and pricing them based on, I don't know, what he's seen at maybe JP Select and elsewhere. So that was kind of interesting.
Did you ask him why he started pricing them higher?
No, I didn't actually. But I remember last time there was a Wagner event, and shortly after was the Tono Lims event, and he had the very same pen that was more expensive at the Tono Lims event than at the Wagner event, and his explanation back then was that it's more expensive for non-members because when you go to the Wagner event, you're paying the entrance fee, so you should get an
Right.
appropriate discount for that reason.
Right. So one of the things that Tono Lims does, and you mentioned it was more crowded than Tips, but Tips had different time blocks, and you could only stay in those time blocks. I mean, officially, right?
Yeah.
So I think Tips encouraged people to come at different times. Where as far as I'm aware, you want to be at Tono Lims, like obviously there's this random number generator thing, but you want to get in as soon as possible, right? Because
Yes.
otherwise you're not buying anything, basically. You might be buying some Tono Lims inks, and that's
Mm.
it. So I'm not sure that I would necessarily agree that it's now a bigger show, but I think it's probably a more concentrated show.
I didn't just mean the number of attendees because since I was just there for 30 minutes, it was hard to say, but I would say there were more tables, more vendors than at Tips.
Okay, that's a lot of vendors, though.
Yeah, it was it was a lot. Actually, I put some stories on Instagram, and maybe I'll save it in a highlight. But it was a lot of tables.
Yeah, that's quite a significant amount of vendors. I'm surprised. Calling me impressed.
Yeah, and I'm also surprised that I managed to do this event for free. Well, again, free for the attendees, but if you have a table, I'm sure you're paying. But compared to Wagner and pretty much everything else, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. On my side, I came to Kurashiki. I was inspired, obviously by Quay's trip initially, and I talked to this friend of ours, Sincerely Mori, on Instagram. So she's come to one of the pensions. I think last time the one that you didn't come to, and actually on the first, we both were in Kansai. So Akane and I went to Kyoto. We enjoyed some hot springs, and Mori was here as well. So we talked, and the day after, Mori went to Kurashiki and had these photos up on Instagram, and I turned to Akane and I said, I think we need to go to Kurashiki for Golden Week. So yeah, so booked the hotel for Kurashiki. I had some credit card points that I could use for Osaka. Kurashiki, the hotels were actually pretty expensive. I guess because it's Golden Week, but fortunately I could break it up. One day Kurashiki, a few days out in Osaka. So we're gonna go to Universal Studio. I think day after tomorrow or something. But anyways, we decided to come to Kurashiki, and really for two main reasons, I would say. The first one is that the new TSL Travelers Company, Travelers Factory store, which Quay talked about extensively, a few weeks back. So we went today, and we were actually pretty lucky because Kawai-san, who is the owner of TSL, he was actually in the store, and he brought his two daughters, lovely little children, and we got to chat with him. We talked about our friends who've been there, like Ame. So he actually showed us Ame's accordion that she had sent to the store at the opening, to congratulate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we got to see that. I actually bought several. I bought a bag and this like outer jacket. While Akane bought a traveler's notebook, and you could customize these traveler's notebooks. Now, you've heard me say this plenty of times, but one of the biggest problems that I find with these traveler's notebooks is that the knot is at the back, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you write, it's actually a terrible writing experience if you use it as an actual notebook. So the
Mm.
idea is you have to take out the inserts and then put the inserts back. So, they were doing this customization, and we said to the guy, we said, hey, we were thinking of doing it at home, but if you can do it here, like we'd love it if you do it here. Can you put a patch on the back to cover the hole, and then make another hole at the spine? So it turns out they could do that.
Mm.
So yeah,
Nice.
so we had them do that there, and we added a few more patches. Um, Obviously with the traveler stamps, we did a lot of those stamps. Yeah, it was a very very nice experience. So I do think that while Kurashiki is maybe a little bit out of the way, um, for people who are doing a Kansai trip, it's actually kind of worth it to come because you have Kyoto, but this feels different from Kyoto. This feels they do have the traditional houses, but this feels much more like Nikko or something. So it was very nice, and we definitely haven't finished exploring the city yet. But our second destination was Aun Glassworks.
You're already going in Quay's footsteps.
Exactly. Now, I think that, and I was talking to Kawai-san's little daughters.
Mm.
Kawai-san, um, the more I think about it, he's actually a genius. He is so smart in the way that he's done his business, because the original TSL, right, started in really the middle of nowhere, right, middle of nowhere Okayama, and he's been able to build this into, it's an international brand. There are stores that want to carry his products, and the way he's done that and the way that he's marketed his products, it's so intelligent. So the website, you have these beautiful photos of dogs, and camping, and
Mm.
people. The dog is their dog, right? And the photographer is just their friend. And if you see a guy in like a yellow jacket holding their bags, that's actually Kawai-san. So with very little resources, right, he's actually managed to capture the essence of what his brand is. And this is in juxtaposition with, some of the brands that we talk about in Tokyo. For example, one of the offenders, right, is Shosaikan. Shosaikan takes terrible photos, but their store is so beautiful, right? Another example, unfortunately, Bunga Box, right?
Mm.
They released a pen the other day, the Horoyoi Sakanamachi.
Yeah.
They released a pen with just a drawing of the pen.
Only barely better than the last time that KOP with like a 5 pixel photo. I remember that. Yeah.
It was like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
So I think Kawai-san, he's really got a creative. He's a creative genius. He's got such a smart mind for brand building, and the products themselves. Of course, they're good. Okay, of course the products are high quality. They're beautiful, but I'm in the city. Everything is high quality and beautiful. Everything is good.
Mm.
But there's only one international brand, right? So the whole atmosphere, the whole way that they did it, on the second floor with Traveler's Company, they have like records. And sure, yeah, it's like a collaboration with Traveler's Factory, but it really is a TSL shop. And the staff are very nice. They're very good. Yeah, it's all in all a wonderful experience. And part of that is because they are very they understand very well how to use word of mouth. Traveler's Notebook is not a company that spends necessarily on like ads, but they spend a lot to get their brand out, and a lot of the ways that people find this company is through word of mouth. It's through people like Quay who rave about their products. It's to, people on Instagram taking photos, and their products are photogenic, right?
Right.
The reason why I bring this up is when we went to Aon Glassworks, huge signs plastered all over the wall, which says, no photography allowed. You're not allowed to take pictures. The entire process is very secretive, and we've talked about this before on the podcast. A lot of glass makers are very protective of their processes.
Yeah, especially as it relates to the nib.
Yeah. So you're not allowed to take pictures of the store. You're not allowed to take pictures of anything. And for me, this is a lost opportunity because it's not like glass pens are not photogenic, right? It's not like people aren't going to take photos of your pens. It's not like you didn't take photos of your pens and put them on Instagram. So, we pretty much know what your pens look like. In such a photogenic city, not allowing people to take pictures of the store, to share their experience, it's just a lost opportunity in getting people to want to come, in getting people to bring themselves over and really sit in front of you and just have a good time. So we bought 3 pens from Aon. The pens are good. Something that he does very interestingly is he does all of the nib sizes up to what he calls a coarse nib. Now, I think in regular pens, it's impressive if you can get a good ink flow and a smooth writing experience on, extra fine nibs, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the times for glass pens, the finer it is, I feel like the easier it is to write with, because the tip of the glass, right? Whether it's super smooth or not, it doesn't really matter as much. Whereas if it's a very fat tip, then every little bit kind of matters.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
So the ink flow on larger tips are usually pretty bad, but Aon has discovered, he's onto something where the large tips, I tried what he calls a C nib, which is, a coarse nib, and the ink flow is superb. The smoothness, it's extremely smooth. It's very fun to play with. And yeah, we bought 3 pens. The pens are absolutely beautiful, but I do think there's a lost opportunity here. And yeah, we'll go collect our pens tomorrow because he needs the night to actually work on them. And then afterwards we'll go to Usagiya, down in the south. But I think that the entire Kurashiki, city, it's definitely worth coming if you plan on a Kansai trip. It's actually it's more interesting than Kyoto as a stationary destination. That's 100%.
So I just have one question, and that is, was it your idea or was it Akane's idea to go to Kurashiki?
It was my idea.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't expect that.
Well, what happened was, it was my idea. I looked at it, and then I kind of turned to her. I was like, "Do you think we need to go?" And she looks at me. She's like, "Yeah, I think we need to go."
I haven't been there. I really need to go one day. I haven't been traveling at all for a while. But sounds like fun.
It's worth it, and you come to Kurashiki, and then you make a stop at Kobe, and then maybe Osaka. Osaka's not even that big of a stationary city, but yeah, definitely Kobe. Yeah, maybe Osaka. Make a trip out of it. It's definitely worth coming. It's definitely worth coming.
Are you going to do a post about this? About your trip?
Maybe. I need to make a post about Tohma first.
Right.
All right. So last time we mentioned that we wanted to talk a little bit about these investor reports. Obviously, May, we've talked about it a lot. It's kind of the beginning of the financial year. You have some pilot news for us.
Yeah, so this is not related to the financial report, but there's been some news coming from pilot recently. So I can't remember if we covered it last time, but I think other podcasts have already covered the news about the cartridges. Maybe you saw that in May. uh,
Yes.
Pilot is going to start selling Iroshizuku cartridges. I think it's a pack of 6 cartridges for like 900 yen plus tax. So it's a bit more expensive than like Sailor's recently announced cartridges, but the packaging is nicer. And I think it's like 12 different Iroshizuku inks to choose from. So it's not a full lineup, but I guess these are the best sellers. Did you see this? What do you think?
So I heard Brad and Mike talk about it. It's it's nice. It's very good for, I think, the intermediate um, fountain pen person to get into these inks, and it's a good transition to bottled inks, because if you just have the black or the blue black, it's not really an incentive to go try out something maybe nicer or better or discover the world of inks. Plenty of people use fountain pens with just a black hardware, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I think here, like if you're new to the hobby and you just bought like a Kakano family series, maybe you want something a little bit more exciting than Pilot Blue Black, but you don't want to spend another 1,000 yen on a Con 70 and another like 2,000 yen for a bottle. Here you can try a more exciting ink without spending more than the pen cost of the pen on an ink.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And other companies have done this in the past, so I'm actually surprised that the Japanese companies are so slow at this, because like Montblanc has all of their regular bottled inks in cartridge form. That's how I started. So yeah, this is, I think, definitely a positive development, and I think it actually ties very well to what they've written in their investor reports. Because if you look at the revenue of Pilot, last year I think they really did so. Sorry, financial year 2020, they really took a hit in terms of their revenue, right? And in 2021, so which was the one that just passed, it's gotten a little bit, you know, I would say back similar, comparable to 2019, which is good, right? That's good news. But if you look at the numbers from 2017, 2018, 2019, actually their revenue, their sales has been decreasing year on year. And if you're a shareholder, that's not what you want to see. So they actually did, I think, discuss that they need to, continue. Their goal is to be the best stationery brand in the world, and that they need to work on commercial products that they can sell, right? That's going to bring them revenue. And I think this is actually a good way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we have long complained that Pilot isn't really doing enough, and it's very clear from the reports that the fountain pen inks are such a small part of their business that they don't even mention it in the reports, right? When they talk about like stationery related like products and sales, they talk about G2 and friction and new releases of mechanical pencils. The only mention of fountain pens is in terms of like this company started out as we made the first all made in Japan gold nib pen, and we have our Namiki pens, right? But they don't really talk about how they like the fine writing division is doing, because it's such a small part of their business. But maybe they are slowly discovering that there's something going on right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In the report that they've just done, you'll see that they have breakdowns by markets, and in all of the other markets, it's like, oh yeah, our G2 is performing very well. Our pens are performing very well. And then when you read the one for the domestic market, it actually cites, due to strong domestic competition, whatever the analysis is, and they don't mention the G2, right? I think they mentioned like Dr. Grip or something, but they don't mention the G2. And I think that's very interesting, because obviously Japan does have a lot of strong stationery manufacturers. And some of these aren't global companies, right? So, like some of these have very limited global distribution, not like Pilot. But in the domestic market, because everything is easy in Japan, there's huge competition. You don't have to buy a Pilot. And then when you think about the fountain pens, right? The most popular pen is a platinum.
Yeah, well, the G2 is certainly not a standout product in Japan, but Friction is, and that is the product
Mm.
that I often mention. It's probably one of the most popular
Yeah.
pens, even in Japan, and that's also something you see when you go to the stores, even your small like book/stationery stores in your some
Yeah.
small station. They always have Friction pens.
But I'm wondering because Pilot actually doesn't have anything really in that mid range. So they have the standard, I would say, a little bit boring, 72, 742, 743, like that kind of stuff. And then they have the really wild, really exquisite Makie Emperors, right? What's there in the middle for, let's say, like a collector?
How do you define the middle?
Well, I would say like something that they've released last year, which I would consider to be part of this, is the Capless SE, right? And even the regular SE model. I think that's something that's interesting that they didn't have in their lineup, which is colors and something that keeps you buying. Makes you come back to get another Pilot pen. That was a reason for somebody to get another Capless, or another 91. So I'm hoping that that's going to be something that they can do, especially when we look at Sailor and Platinum.
Yeah, when I think of pilot pens in that price range, I think less about acrylic pens. I think more about wooden pens, metal pens, and even some of the low-end Urushi offerings. That seems to be the kind of models that they do offer. But they're clearly, I mean, this is something we have covered in the last few episodes. They clearly are trying to do more interesting stuff at the low end now with the new colorful grounds, the new Kakunos, the new inks. And just to quickly go back to these pilot news, there are two others, I'm not sure if you saw that, but there are two other things that are coming in June. I'll send you the link in case you didn't see this, but there is a dip pen. Pilot is coming out with a dip pen in June called Iro Utsushi.
I did not see this, in fact, and that is interesting. No.
Oh, you didn't see this? Yeah.
Oh God.
So, well, I mean, the product has kind of existed in the past, because if you remember one of the first Itoya ink event, you got like a cheap dip pen with what looked like a Pilot steel nib, and this is basically the same product except that here is actually Pilot branded. But I think this is a good idea. As far as I can tell, the one with a plastic barrel is a 700 yen, which is a very good like entry level price for if you just want to get a bottle of ink or a few bottles of inks and you just wanted to play with it. It's a very good price.
So this is following Sailor, right? This is exactly what Sailor did.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. It's both the cartridge release and now this dip pen. They're really following Sailor's footsteps here.
And the second thing that they're doing is they're going to release sets of 4 of inks that are basically the exact same inks that they already have in Iroshizuku line, but they've kind of arranged them not in color but in theme.
And what's interesting here is that they call them a limited edition, and the price is kind of expensive. And I think this is a bottle design we haven't seen before from Pilot.
Yeah, it is very expensive. But hey, this is actually a good idea because people love the story, right? And they haven't done, and that's the problem with Pilot. They haven't done the storytelling. They haven't done the work when it comes to branding these pens. So now I think this could be in a good direction. And interestingly, we're seeing Pilot chase Sailor in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree. I mean, the dip pen and the cartridges are both clear examples of that.
Yeah. But speaking of Sailor, let's dive a little bit into that. Sailor, we've talked about before. They've been posting negative numbers for many years, and last year they posted positive.
Yeah, so this is the first time, I think I don't have it in front of me, but first time in 4 years it's all positive. So that's good. I mean, we have talked so much about how, they keep increasing prices, and, can they really keep going like this? Isn't, people going to stop buying these pens because, they're getting too expensive? But whatever they're doing, it clearly works, right? So that's the TLDR.
Yeah, and actually the positive is hugely positive, because I think they're 110% revenue versus last year, which is fantastic for a 100-year-old company. Doing fountain pens. That's an incredible number right there. That's what your shareholders really want to see. And so this strategy of sparkly pens, the strategy of multicolored pens, they've really gotten down to their sweet spot. And I think what's the reality is, right? I mean, just looking by the numbers, the reality is that Sailor is finding themselves in a very good position right now. You might not like it, I might not like it, and certainly I don't like price increases. But what it seems, right, what it looks like is that they seem to have been underpricing their products in the past. That's why they're losing money, right? And that's what exactly Nagahara said to us too, right? Sailor had undervalued their products in the past, and so he actually enjoyed these price increases.
Yeah, I remember he mentioned that. That was interesting. Yeah, so Sailor seem to be doing well. Yeah, both the stationary division and the robotics divisions are doing well. They did mention that sales of like low end ballpoints isn't going well because there's too much competition. So they're saying they're focusing their efforts on fountain pens and ink, which finally.
Same as Pilot, right? Same as Pilot. There's a lot of competition. But, only really, right, 3 companies here make their own nibs. 4 if you count Tohma.
Yeah.
So focusing on the fountain pen, that's like a no-brainer. That there's no competition here. So I definitely think, there is competition, but it's not as strong as ballpoint pens.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, good for Sailor. I'm very happy to see this. And one thing that I did notice, which I didn't realize before, is we talk about this Shishikura pens, and I think oftentimes people wonder, oh, how come Shishikura can do like these crazy pens? So
you saw the ownership, yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that Sailor owns Sunrise Trading, who's the employer of Shishikura. So yeah, that did answer a question mark for me. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And obviously Platinum is the kind of odd person out. I do want to shout them out here because, okay, everybody who's listened to the podcast for a while knows that I'm not a Platinum fan. But they're a private company, and to exist in this market as a private company where your competitors are receiving, basically they're receiving funding from the market, that's very impressive.
Yeah, there are pros and cons of being a public company, but yeah, it's it's very hard to find good information about Platinum precisely because it's privately held. But yeah, that seems to have been able to keep it going for over 100 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think necessarily being a public company is bad or whatever, but this does mean that they've had to be pretty much, cash positive for however many years. Maybe they took a loan out sometime, but you have to repay those, right? So they've been doing very well for themselves. And despite my personal preferences, Platinum is a well-regarded brand.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, the 3776 is one of the best-selling pens. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think for the next financial year, I would love if, as I said, Pilot focused a little bit more, maybe chased Sailor a little bit more. They've been knocked out of their throne, so to say. So chase Sailor a bit more, be in a little more touch with the fountain pen audience. I'm not saying that this is going to make a huge dent on their overall financials, because I know that that's not where most of their money is from. But if you look at Sailor posting 10% year-on-year growth on your fountain pen business, or driven by your fountain pen business, that's something, right? That's something. So I'm hoping that there's more there. And then with Sailor, I think focusing really on the manufacturing capabilities, because I honestly, I don't think that their pens really should cost that much, but it might be to do with the way that they make the pens, the way that they make the nibs, whatever it is, right? It does cost that much, and I know that Sailor's not trying to scalp us or anything, but things do cost, and there are ways to reduce it through efficiencies, and that's something that Platinum seems to be doing very well. Nagahara even said, Nakada Shacho is very focused on operational efficiencies. So yeah, I do hope that Sailor and with Plus's acquisition, focus a little bit on that. I know that they're going to increase their prices again soon, though. So bad news for us, but yeah, let's hope that there's progress on that front.
Well, there's one thing here, which is the procurement cost for raw materials, and because one of the hot topics in Japan for the last few months has been how Enyasu, so the fact that the Japanese yen is getting very, very cheap, not just to the US dollar, but to most major currencies, and there are reasons for that, and normally that is considered like a good thing for Japanese industry, if exports, if the sales are other currencies and so on. But for the particular businesses we're talking about here, if gold is a major part of your procurement cost, then you may have a problem. Interestingly, I didn't see any specific mention of that. I looked at Pilot's report, and they always talk about risks related to procurement and FX rates and so on, but that was just like their normal year after year boilerplate. They didn't call out anything specific this year, and it was the same with Sailor. But I imagine that for Sailor in particular, given that fountain pens, especially gold nib fountain pens, is a bigger part of the business than for Pilots, that's going to continue to be something they have to adjust for.
Well, I will say that the weakening of the yen really, was intensified in April.
Yeah.
So they probably didn't have time to do that kind of analysis. But the yen is scarily weak right now, and a lot of businesses are complaining because, as you said, it was usually considered to be a good thing. But I know that a lot of businesses are saying, "Hey, actually, it's not benefiting us so much anymore because Japan has become more internationalized. Japan has become a more globalized economy." All right. So I think that's all we have for today. I think this was a very, analytical episode, not too much about like new products per se, but I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll talk to you in a few weeks' time. Anything you've got to add?
No, I think that we got everything covered, and hopefully we'll have some new products to talk about in 2 weeks' time.
Yep. And with that, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm a Fudafan on Instagram and on Twitter, and I have a blog at fudafan.com.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.